General liability is something that's important for all businesses, especially contractors. You got 1 million per occurrence, 2 million per aggregate. Something we think about are named insureds. Named insureds on policies are something where you have like a construction policy. The construction part is going to apply to the general liability, third party bodily injury, property damage, 1 million per occurrence, 2 million aggregate. And on a construction account, the named insureds are the ones that are covered on the policy. Sometimes there is a separate real estate portion of the general liability. We have someone who builds places and then adds them to their real estate portfolio. So when it goes to the real estate portfolio, it's a different exposure. And so carrying the named insureds over is important. So typically what you have is you have a general liability policy, then you have a builder's risk policy. But so you have the general liability for the building, the builder's risk for the building. Builder's risk is sort of the property part of that. The general liability is the liability part of it. Once the building is completed, it is typically moved over to a different type of policy. And so that would be like a property policy, a real estate policy. So sometimes there's confusion if you have a named insured on the general liability builder's risk policy and it moves over into being a completed building, it's no longer under construction. Well, then for the general liability, there's completed operations. For the builder's risk, there's no longer, it moves to the property policy as far as the risk. So if you're a company that happens to do both, where you build and you run rentals, you need to make sure those named insureds are accounted for accordingly. So if you have a general liability policy and it's ABC LLC on that general liability policy, it's also on the builder's risk policy, then you're covering ABC LLC during the time of the construction. Once it's completed, ABC LLC should be put on a separate liability and property policy for the real estate exposure there. And what is contemplated there on the liability side would be the space, the square footage, the rental income.